So now, have you been keeping up with the series so far, the whole Saturn Satan series? Have you been watching that Metu series? Because it really goes with this series. A lot of things in that series you see fits in, and it's a reason for that we're going to get into. Now, I started a new series, the Mystery School Teachings, and that is another major piece that fits in with this whole thing. So, we talked about in that series about how the ancients basically looked up in the sky and saw the sun, the moon, the planets that's visible with the naked eye. And they figured, what they were standing on Earth was probably the same, a planet sitting in space. And they realized, one, that, we don't come from this planet, that, women have children, and that's how we are here on this planet. And since we don't grow from the Earth, we obviously didn't come from the Earth. Something had to put us here. So, they watched the stars and they cataloged the heavens and everything like that to, basically see, what's going on. And we're talking about, thousands of years ago. And it's a lot into this whole thing because we're talking about a race that is after, a previous race. So when I talk about these ancients looking up in the heavens and everything like that, as I said, I'm not talking about the originals or the first group of people that was on the planet. I'm talking about the people who came out after the catastrophe that basically destroyed most of the planet. The civilization that existed before that catastrophe is the main thing. That's the whole big deal that we're trying to get into. Who was these people? What was this civilization about? Where did these people come from? So you got to realize that everything that they tell us, everything that we know now, as far as, things that pertains to the ancients, we're talking about a group of people who are possibly descendant from an earlier race of people that was on the planet that was either wiped out or, possibly left the Earth. So we got to really remember that. A lot of times people think when we talk about the ancients, we're talking about the original people that was here first. You got to remember, human beings haven't been on this planet for that long. This planet, they tell us, it's 4.5 billion years old. So we haven't been here, a billion years. So we know that human life came on this planet a long time ago. So we really got to examine the creation story of us. So as I said, we really have to pay attention to our creation story, and we got to look at what we have been told. So we are told that the planet, as I said, is around, 4.5 billion years old. Now, we know that the Earth began as basically a blob of molten lava, a blob of molten magma. And it eventually formed into a sphere. And we know that happens as a result of gravity. And, we get the shape of the Earth, the round shape, the supposed round shape for you flat earthers. And we look up and we see it's a round moon and a round sun. I mean, common sense would tell you that the Earth is round, but we could possibly be wrong. There's a lot into that, as you all know. But, argument's sake, we know it started out as a blob of molten magma, lava. And millions of years of cooling. We all seen these videos where a volcano erupts and the magma comes out, and then the lava, once it hits water, it cools. And as it cools, it turns into land. And that's how we got our land mass. The Earth's crust is basically cooled down lava. So the whole question would be basically, where did this molten ball of magma, of lava, come from? And we have all heard about the Big Bang Theory. What a lot of people don't realize is there are two Big Bang theories. And the first one, of course, would be the Big Bang that brought about the creation of the entire universe. The second Big Bang would be what brought about the creation of our solar system. A lot of people don't realize that our solar system is the result of a Big Bang. So a lot of times when people hear about the Big Bang, they don't associate Earth coming about from a Big Bang. They always go back to the original Big Bang that supposedly created the universe, and they think that Earth appeared along with our universe. When our universe came into existence as a result of the Big Bang, that the Earth, followed as well. When we know the universe the universe is supposed to be about 12 to 16 billion years old. Earth 4.5 billion. So we know that before the Earth even formed, it was already galaxies and planets that existed, billions of years before Earth even formed. So, people who think critically, deeply would say, well, what started, the Big Bang that created the universe? How did that Big Bang happen? And then if you think a little bit deeper than that, you would say, well, who created the Big Bang? But, more than that, who created the space that the Big Bang took place in? I mean, it had to happen somewhere. Who created that somewhere, and that's when you really want to get deep into it. It's space. It had to be a space that the Big Bang took place in. Who created that space? What did that space consist of? And we can just keep going back deeper and deeper. Now, our feeble brains cannot really comprehend the consciousness of the entire universe. We can't comprehend what things brought it about, or, what rules or circumstances could have possibly brought it into existence. But what you do find out when you start really getting into dark matter and, space and everything like that, that there is no such thing as nothing. I know that sounds weird. There's no such thing as nothing. Nothing is still something. So if nothing is still something, then that means existence has always existed. And I want you to wrap your head around that. Existence has always existed. There is no such thing as time unless you create time. And the only people who worry about time is people who are bound and controlled by it. And that be us. So since we are bound and controlled by time, if you look back, you will see that it was a supernova. And a supernova is when a sun explodes. It was a supernova that brought into existence our solar system. So when a supernova happened, the particles from that exploding sun or star is what created our solar system and brought everything into existence. Now, when we read Genesis 1:1, it says, "In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was without form and void." Now, if you think about that supernova, it was a sun. We know the Bible, when it's talking about God, it's really talking about the sun. So you have God. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The heavens is simply space or the sky, as we know. So the earth was without form and void. So remember, the earth began as basically a blob of liquid magma, of hot magma. It had no form and it was void of life. So the earth was without form and void. So it's giving you the basic concept of the aftermath of the supernova bringing into existence the solar system. Now, when that supernova happened, you basically had the debris fly out into space and crash into clouds and gases. This basically created the perfect formula for, creating a solar system. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, what do you mean clouds and outer space? Well, if you look at the Latin word for cloud, the Latin word for cloud is nebulus, which is nebula. And when you look up anything dealing with space, you'll always see a nebula. A lot of you have heard a nebula. Now, a nebula is basically ionized gases of helium and hydrogen. Remember, I talked about in part 4 how all the periodic tables of elements is basically different amounts of hydrogen atoms that they call, many different things. But really, it's still just hydrogen. Now, if a supernova explodes with enough energy and force, the tiniest particles, the dust particles even, become so hot that they basically cluster together and create these lumps. Now, these lumps basically form together under its own gravity, and it becomes so hot and dense that it creates its own sustainable energy. Now, after the energy is created and it's sustained, you start basically seeing nuclear fires. So these nuclear fires start to ignite and they fan out into a disc shape. And this is basically how a sun is formed. So we have a sun going supernova, exploding. All the debris goes out, and if it's hot enough, it'll basically recreate itself. So you have a supernova going from a sun exploding and turning back into a sun. Now, again, if the debris fans out far enough and it's in the right location, it might crash into other debris. It might crash into a nebula, and you'll get planets. Planets will be created from it. But, if not, then at least the sun will recreate itself. So it's almost like us, the sun, being reborn or recreating itself. So this is one of the amazing things that that scientists looked at and was, shocked by. And it make you wonder, did the ancients already know about this stuff? Because remember, everything was about the sun. So now we basically have the sun, creating our solar system, and then, a new sun basically sustaining, our planet and sustaining us, keeping us alive as well. So, it's a lot more that we have to answer for when you go from the earth being a big molten ball into, what it is today. How did that occur? Obviously, it wasn't no water there. What cooled it down? So scientists will tell you that, eventually, billions of years ago, you had a comet, and they believe this comet was basically made of solid ice, and it crashed into the planet. So researchers will tell you, scientists will tell you that about 50% of the Earth's oceans is made up of water that is not of this planet. It's not from here. It's not from condensation. It's from outer space. And the water is basically older, than our sun. So they're saying that this water, this comet that crashed into Earth, formed before our sun formed, before our solar system formed. And that's crazy. So it crashed into the Earth and began to cool, some of that magma. So we know when it cools, you start to see land generate. And as you have water in this hot, these hot places, because there's still magma everywhere, we know what's going to happen. You're going to have condensation, and the whole water cycle process will happen. You'll have clouds. It'll begin to rain. And these will be some crazy rainstorms that's basically taking place all around the planet. So you have millions of years of this stuff happening, comets of ice hitting the planet, and this rain, generating, and, over millions of years begin to create oceans and cool the planet. And we see how magma, how the lava is so liquid, and water is powerful. We know water will make its way through anything. So it begins to basically carve out huge masses of land. And this is why we have more water on the planet than land, because so much water, so much rain happened over millions and millions of years. So now the question would be, eventually, how did life, the first life, come on this planet? And a lot of people don't think about this. What was the first life? We know it wasn't us. So we really got to get into deeply, what was the first life on this planet? Now, we can already, just by what we can prove 100%, we know that God did not put life on this planet, or maybe God did, as we're going to get into. But the whole thing is, when you really look at it, religion tells us that all living things was created by God, right? Now, we all know the whole metaphor of God, and it's really talking about the sun. And that's exactly, what it's talking about here. So the first life on this planet is called Cyanobacteria. And Cyanobacteria is basically formed from carbon. You have carbon, ammonia, methane, and water vapor. So the right conditions was created on this planet to bring about cyanobacteria, which is a living single cell organism. So if you can just think about all these hot springs that's popping up near volcanoes or underwater volcanoes, eventually it will create the atmosphere, the right elements to generate this life. So you got to remember, these are all natural things. Carbon is natural. It's everywhere. Methane, it's naturally produced on the planet. Ammonia as well. And water vapor. All this stuff is natural elements that's here on Earth before any life was here. So those things combine with the energy from the sun. So this is what you got to realize. It can't happen without the sun. The energy that it needs to become life is absorbed from the light of the sun. So anybody who's done this experiment in college, I've done this experiment in college, where you put the chemicals together and you create bacteria. I actually created a ton of bacteria in college. So I have proof. I can prove that this is exactly how the stuff is formed. And when you realize that this is natural stuff that basically can be created from, nothing, from nobody's hand, then you understand the first life on this planet was basically created from nothing. There's no being that came down and physically put these elements together to put the first life on Earth, which is cyanobacteria. That's a proven fact. So if they want to say God created everything living on this planet, he didn't create cyanobacteria unless they're talking about the sun. Now, it might be hard to fathom, life being created without the workings of something, some kind of person or being. And we actually see this all the time. If you ever left bread out in a certain location, you will create mold, and mold is a living organism. It's alive. So, it's the fluctuation of hot and cold that creates mold. So if you put your bread on top of the refrigerator for too long, you ever notice that it gets wet? And it's all these combinations of things that's going to create life. And you just created life with mold. You got to understand, it's still living, this life. So when you look at the cyanobacteria, we're talking about this stuff happening, all over the world in different places. So billions, trillions of cyanobacteria, single cell and some multi-cell bacteria just popping up all over the earth. This is the first life on the planet. Understand that. So now, cyanobacteria basically absorbs carbon dioxide from the water, and it converts it into carbohydrates, which is its food. It's food supply. So, what do we all do after we eat? Eventually you're going to poop, except for cyanobacteria poops oxygen. So what happens is this oxygen, over time releases into the air. And, we're talking about trillions upon trillions of cyanobacteria pooping oxygen into the air. It's going to go up, and eventually it begins to react to the sun's ultraviolet rays, and it created our ozone layer. So this is how our ozone layer was formed. And we know the ozone layer protects the earth from the sun's ultraviolet rays, the harmful rays, I should say. And this is how we got our ozone layer. So when you go back and look and pay attention to this stuff, and I'm telling you because this is the official explanation that they give us for how our planet and everything formed. So no matter where you go, they are in agreement on this. Dates are off and stuff like that, but for the most part, they're talking about everything I'm telling you right here on how our Earth came into existence as far as sustaining life. So of course, after a while, we get our ozone layer, and the Earth begins to be able to sustain oxygen. And of course, after a while, they say millions of years, life began to pop up. So you had single cell organisms. This cyanobacteria will eventually turn into, fungus and, other bacteria and algae and stuff like that. And from algae and everything, we start getting plants, and from flowers and all that, we start getting trees. And according to them, we started to build an atmosphere that was, able to support and sustain complex multi-cell organisms, and they began to pop up. So animals or insects, we start getting it from insects, animals, and so on and so forth. This is their official excuse of how animals got here. Now, I have a different reason how, and I don't go with their whole research because it to me it's hard to really fit that in there, because you had basically, according to science, cyanobacteria was on this planet alone for 3.5 billion years. Now, if after 3.5 billion years of just cyanobacteria, then you get life. You start getting life popping up, not life. You start getting animals, popping up and everything like that. That doesn't fit to me. It's something had to been introduced to the planet for this massive change to start to occur. And that's what we're going to kind of get into. So science tells us that we had an oxygen-rich atmosphere for about 2.45 billion years. And it took another billion years for these single-cell bacteria, multi-cell bacteria as well, to evolve into more complex organisms. So you had this bacteria going from bacteria, into fish eventually, and tadpoles and frogs and lizards, to megalodon and T-Rex and Stegosaurus. So, you would think for it to go from, small organisms to more complex organisms to these giants, you would expect to see more giants. Now, they tell us that the atmosphere was so humid and it created the conditions that sustained and created these giant reptiles. But you would still expect to see other giants, on the planet as well. We don't find that. We find these giant dinosaurs, and the whole thing is fishy with that anyway, because we know that they lied to us about dinosaurs from the jump, since we can prove now that dinosaurs and humans did coexist. So the whole timeline is kind of, out of whack, and we really don't know what's going on with that when it's talking about dinosaurs. We know they possibly did exist as long ago as they say, but maybe they all wasn't wiped out the way that they tell us with a meteor and all that, because we know that humans and these dinosaurs coexisted, or humans are much older than they are telling us. So we're not really going to get into that whole thing. The problem is, what I'm getting into here is the evolutionary scale that they give us for us, for humans, for life. So if you had Cyanobacteria for 3.5 billion years on its own, on this planet, then all of a sudden evolving into these super complex organisms and these mega giant reptiles, what's up with that? And the thing that really exposes this thing is Pangaea. And if you heard of Pangaea is basically the landmass that came about, through the formation of the planet or whatever. So basically, at one point, you had this one large landmass called Pangaea. So this basically all of the continents connected together was Pangaea. Now, Pangaea had life. It sustained life. But the problem with Pangaea was it had multiple volcanoes. So you had so many volcanoes together erupting simultaneously, and it released a lot of these deadly gases into the atmosphere. It completely changed the Earth's atmosphere, and it wiped out 95% of all life on the planet. Gone. And we know eventually they would separate and we would get our continents and everything like that. But you had 95% of life on Earth wiped out. And then it only took 30 million years for life to start to come back, for the Earth to recover. So how we go from 3.5 billion years of bacteria to basically back to nothing, to no bacteria except for certain locations, but then life recreating itself in 30 million years. The numbers, it don't add up. It shouldn't took so fast. It shouldn't happen so fast for life to recover after that cataclysmic event. So the numbers don't add up, and there's a lot of scientists in agreement on that of what happened for life to recover so fast. So this is why many of us are so hooked on the fact that something was introduced to this planet to create these more complex organisms. Now, Pangaea existed 300 million years ago. So, it's separated into the continents we know today. A few times these land masses broke up and separated. The problem is, the dating. And you got to understand, they give us these long, crazy dates, a billion, years of evolution, 100, 600 million years and stuff like that. So we don't really question evolution. And so we can say, well, it takes this amount of time for things to evolve. And this is why we're not seeing evolution. But that don't make any sense when you tell us, 3.5 billion years for bacteria to go from bacteria and to eventually dinosaurs. That's a long time. And then we get life basically recreating itself in 30 million years. It doesn't fit, especially when you remember that we're talking about under different atmospheres, different circumstances. So we can say that, okay, well, maybe the atmosphere sped life up. But if that was the case, then you would expect to see more animals, the evolution of animals in different places. And I'm going to get into that, what I mean by that. But the thing is this, the problem that you would have with this whole thing, this is the problem I have with it because listen, this is something that I spent a lot of years of my life on, really digging into all of this, because to me, this is the key. If you want to start with what we're getting into now, to me, you have to go here. If you really want to look into all the mystery and everything like that, this should have been the first thing you was looking at. You should have been looking at evolution. You should have been looking at what they tell us. And the main thing I found out over my years of researching this, they tell us anything. They don't give us no truth at all. I mean, you really have to question when they tell you the time. I mean, we don't understand. It's just so much stuff they lie about. So you have to question everything and really look into everything that they talk about, because they lie to us. And the whole thing is, they think you're stupid. It's like, shut up, watch TV. Shut up, go to work. Don't pay attention to this stuff. Here go football, be quiet. And they distract us with so much stuff that we don't really pay attention to what they're actually telling us. We just say in our brain, it makes sense. Or this guy's smarter than me, so he know I don't know shit. So, I mean, you really got to dig into stuff on your own. Because my problem with evolution, with the whole thing, no matter how much sense that it made and added up to in a lot of places, is the fact that science tells us that we evolve from cyanobacteria. So we're talking about cyanobacteria eventually becoming these primates that we eventually evolve from. So that would mean what, people? There is no God. There is no creator. There's just this. There is no purpose to all of this. It's just something that was created out of a supernova, an explosion that happened, and through various climate changes and circumstances, we just so happen to pop into existence as a result of evolution. Can't accept that. That's something I couldn't accept. And when I got to this point, I was stuck. And I remember this. This is one of the hardest things that I was stuck on, because it fit. And when you're reading all the books, and all the books are saying the same thing, and it's like, well, wait a minute. Then why y'all tell us about this Bible shit? 1 minute, y'all telling us we just evolved from primates. And then y'all give me this book that's talking about this holy God that created everything. What the fuck is going on? So, to people like me and you, if you really go crazy over information like that and you really got to do research, yeah, that shit had me snapping. So I had to really look. And I dedicated a lot of time to this, to really looking into this, because I wanted to be sure. Because to me, it makes a lot of sense at first, because it explains a lot. It explained the whole thing. Well, this is why we don't see God. This is why no God has came down and did anything, because, we just evolved from nothing. We are so insignificant that whoever the super God that created us don't really give a shit, because, you don't care about the bacteria that's growing on the ocean floor. It can do whatever the hell it wants. I don't even really know it exists or what it look like. So what? I'm so much on a higher scale of existence. Whatever that stuff is doing, I don't care. And little do we know, bacteria on the ocean floor could be going through a whole bunch of political shit that we have no clue about. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but who knows? In the scheme of things, we're talking about ultra small and huge. So it was something that blew me away, and I couldn't accept it because of the power of the spirit, the soul, consciousness. This is something that is so super advanced. And it just took me, getting some more education to figure out what's going on. And we're going to get into that because I want you guys to know. So evolution is what they tell us, and they stuff the Bible down our throat so we know it's all bullshit. So we got to look at this whole evolutionary scale and see where the problem lies. And of course, it's a problem. It's a major problem when we get into these primates, because when we get into the primates, we look at the evolutionary chart and we can see, you have primates coming, evolving, and basically you have gorillas and chimps still being here on this planet. But then when we get over to Homo Australopithecus, how you pronounce it, I think. This is the big issue right here because they have a link connecting these two and that link should not be there. Now we're going to get back into this chart. Now it's because I remember when I got to this point of evolution, I was just thinking about, damn, how smart animals are. And it's like, well, damn, animals became smart fast. When you think about cyanobacteria, 3.5 billion years of existence. And then all of a sudden they become these super intelligent, organisms. So you have to understand what it takes to become an evolved, complex organism. Now, in order for this bacteria to really evolve, it has to get with the other cyanobacteria and agree to live together, to agree to share food. But the most important part is it had to agree to this complex developmental program, which basically is going to redirect cells to different parts of the body to do specific jobs. Now, when you think about how complex even an animal body is, in our body, we got lungs to breathe and a heart and everything like that, and all kinds of organs, our pancreas, our liver and everything. It's different cells that make up these different organs and everything. So we want to get into that. But this is the type of sophistication that these organisms will have to have in order for it to go from these single cell, eat and poop organisms to something more complex. So we're talking about a long process of evolution that will have to take place, and it will have to take consciousness. They have to take these single cells being conscious of their situation, and they will have to agree to evolve. This is something that's going to take everybody agreeing on, because what's going to have to happen also is they will have to basically kill any bacteria that could not evolve, because you don't want them reproducing organisms that's going to be the same, that's not going to evolve into the new species, because you want evolution to happen, because this is something you would have to really agree to happen. So the thing is, when we look at Pangaea, all these animals was wiped out, and 30 million years later you had new animals come into existence. The problem is we're talking about 3.5 billion years of this cyanobacteria in existence. Now, 3.5 billion years, nothing but bacteria. We should not find any life on the planet during that time. And we did. So you had scientists discover these bugs, and they date them to 3.7 billion years ago. So this is before cyanobacteria. Now, even if you want to say maybe the numbers might be off, you got to look at that number. 3.7 billion years was before cyanobacteria. And remember, it still took another billion years or so for life, for basically, something to crawl out of the waters and, begin to walk around. So that's another billion years tacked onto that. You have PBS and CNN doing a story on this, on how they found the fossilized remains of these bugs that existed 3.7 billion years ago. This is a problem. And also, we know our atmosphere cannot really sustain life 2.5 billion years ago. So we shouldn't find really no kind of organism that can crawl around or walk around and live on the surface more than 2.5 billion years ago. And again, if no humans or no kind of intelligent life was walking around on the surface of the planet 2.5 billion years ago, then, who created these? And these spears, they find in South Africa. They date them to about 2.8 billion years. They also found similar spheres in Utah dating 2.5 million years. And we know about the spheres in Costa Rica and also in Bosnia. And we find all over the planet these spheres that don't nobody really know what they are. People thought for one reason they was formed from something naturally, but the lines is what give it away. These, lines around these spheres. Now, it's not 100%, it's supposed to be 100% proven that the age of these spheres, but of course, not everybody agree. But the fact that we find these spheres in so many different places, it's hard for people to just discount them. And, that's a huge number to be, way off of 3.7 billion years. So, I doubt they off a billion years or 500 million years or what have you. Even if they're off a billion years, it's still, it's weird because, something had to create these spheres, and we know it had to be some kind of intelligent life to do that, and no humans was supposed to be here that long ago. So this is something that you have to factor into the whole process when we're looking at everything, and you have to say, well, what the fuck is this? How the hell did these spheres get here? How did these, eat and poop organisms, single cell organisms, they just eat and poop and reproduce. That's all they do. How did they go from these single cell organisms to these complex organisms forming together and creating a plan to evolve? And this is what we're seeing that they had to do, what must have happened in order for them to evolve. They really had to come together and agree to share food. As I said, agree to live together, agree to go through this whole developmental program and have conscious control of their cells, to redirect their cells to do different things throughout the body in order to evolve into these walking around organisms that we see, today. So think about that. Think about the complicity, the complex nature of, such a job. And, we know, as I said, our body has different organs and, our liver, our heart, what have you. And there are cells that make up these, different parts of the body. So for these organisms to go through such a complex evolution is something that if you wanted to do today, again, this is why they give us these numbers, billions of years, and they decided to do this. But if you wanted to do that today, you would have to engineer it in a lab. It's just that simple. So as I said, something had to introduce these organisms to our planet, and the evolution had to took place probably somewhere else, possibly on this planet, but the ingredients had to be put there, or something had to be put in place or introduced, as I said, in order for this evolution to occur. It is highly unlikely that these stupid eat and poop bacteria was able to organize after 3.5 billion years this complex idea to evolve, and to evolve for what? You got it made. You just eat and poop and reproduce. So, it's a lot that go into this, and a lot of things you got to really think about and look at, when it comes to this stuff. As I said, I really researched this stuff for years, and it's stuff that boggled my mind. And, when you start to really think about the complex, nature of our, organs and everything, that's something that is hard to fathom. Now, scientists, of course, highly debate the date of those spheres, because it basically turns, evolution upside down. It turns everything upside down. The date of those, insects that they found of, 3.7 billion years. It just really messes up everything that they tried to stuff into our brain as far as evolution and everything like that. So you have some scientists who came up with the theory that, meteors hit the earth carrying, bacteria that, mixed with the bacteria already here and created the animals, created the insects and everything like that. But then you have to ask yourself, well, how did that bacteria survive upon impact? And even if it did, if that is the case, then obviously that meteor had to come from somewhere that had bacteria that possibly supports life, sustains life. So no matter how you slice it, that bacteria is still alien, and it still had to come from somewhere that obviously also supports life. So of course, this is something that is just touchy all the way around with them, because they want to keep far from out of your mind the fact that life could possibly exist somewhere else. That's something they obviously don't want us to know the truth about. And they dance around this whole thing. I've read so many different explanations and excuses on this whole thing, because it's obviously true. The spheres, something created them. They want to completely discount them by not talking about them, but they can't deny the science and behind them and the fact that they are here. And if you still want to date them to 1 billion years ago and not even go to 3.7 billion years, that's still, we ain't supposed to be here.